All right, so welcome to another evening of Leftist Read-Along. We're just going to get to it today. Again, this is a read-along for my personal benefit, as well as the benefit of anybody else that wants to share or read along. Most of the articles here are left-leaning articles. Most of them are sourced from liberationnews.org. Cool. If you want any more details, feel free to read the description box. And let's get going here with the first article for today. Closing statement from the People's Conference for Palestine. All right, this was People's Conference for Palestine, May 27th, 2024. That was last Monday, I believe. The following statement was issued by the Covenant Organization and the conclusion of the historic People's Conference for Palestine, which took place May 24th through the 26th in Detroit. Watch videos for the conference's sessions here. So the videos are on a hyperlink. If people are following the article, feel free to click on the hyperlinks. Reading on. A few hours ago in Rafah, the Zionist occupation bombed a camp of displaced Palestinians sheltering in a so-called humanitarian zone. We call it a camp, but in reality, it is a space densely packed with over 1.4 million forcibly displaced people who are seeking refuge in makeshift tents. The Zionist entity has made the entirety of the Gaza Strip unlivable. It has made safe havens into zones of destruction. The Zionist occupation has reached new levels of barbarity, and this is because the Western criminal forces have given the Zionist entity the material, military, and ideological support necessary for them to continue waging this war with complete impunity. This is not a humanitarian crisis. This is a genocidal war against a colonized people. This is a genocidal war against a colonized people to stifle the break our spirit. This is a war against humanity itself. But brothers and sisters, do not let the occupation's rage and blind destruction distract you from the absolute truth. The truth is that there are no bombs strong enough, no fires hot enough, no prisons brutal enough to destroy the spirit of the Palestinian people. We are not a people that can ever be destroyed. The occupation does not know that for the Palestine people, the dead becomes the martyr, the prisoner becomes the teacher, the besieged becomes the free, and the refugee becomes the key that will surely return to its rightful home. Victory is not an abstract concept or an unknown future. Victory is on the horizon. Victory is what we are here to organize for. Our message to the occupiers, to the forces of death and destruction. You have murdered and maimed with total impunity. You think your bombs and technologies of war will break the spirit and will of the Palestinian people. You think that your repression of our movement will stop us. But every martyr and every prisoner only strengthens our resolve and conviction. As families are destroyed and men are imprisoned, as our people in Gaza continue to be displaced into refugee tents, continue to face famine, and endure this brutal genocide, the least we can do, the very least that we can do, is to refuse capitulation and demobilization. No amount of intimidation or repression will deter the masses who have been awakened and exposed to the racist and genocidal nature of Zionism. We will be here in the streets, on our campus, in our classrooms, in our workplaces, every day until Zionism is defeated and until the total liberation and return of our people. All of you here today have been written into the history of Palestinian struggle. We convened in Detroit at the People's Conference for Palestine with over 3,500 people from across North America and tens of thousands of people online. We have made our message clear that we, the movement for Palestine in North America and across the world, are here to fight until victory. The convening organization assembled this conference amidst both genocide and revolution because it is our duty to grow this movement as one arm of many in the ongoing national liberation struggle for Palestine. Over the course of the last 3 days, we have taken lessons from our history and present in order to apply them to the future. We have heard from movement leaders their experiences of victory, challenges, and defeats. We have built connections and relationships that will drive our movement forward. We honored our martyrs and prisoners and the families that continue to carry their legacy. They attempt to stop us, denying visas for speakers and harassing participants at the airports, and yet we are undeterred. Over the course of the last 3 days, we have consolidated around the immense contributions of the student movement and labor sector, explored the advancements in the cultural front, deepened our knowledge of how imperialism and imprisonment operate in Palestine, strategized around how to cut ties with Zionism in our workplaces, and aligned on campaign targets. At this conference, we fundraised over $200,000 to rebuild Gaza and to support our people in Gaza, who have paid and continue to pay the ultimate sacrifice for liberation. And we know this is only a drop in the ocean of what we can do and should do. Friends and comrades, brothers and sisters, we are up against an enemy that is highly organized, and so we must be more organized. This is our commitment, the commitment to organization that we leave here with. We know that it is the resistance on the ground that will determine the course of the battle for Palestine, and that the battle will be long and the conditions impossible to predict. However, it is certain that we are one step closer to liberation, and that liberation is not only possible, it is visible, tangible, and demanded by the masses of the world. But in order to march closer to liberation, we in the far diaspora must be ready, and we must prepare. And so before we conclude, we would like to highlight the ways all of you can continue to organize for Palestine. We have decided as a steering committee to build out infrastructure to better coordinate and respond to this movement. I want to leave you here with two important announcements. First, June 8th will mark 8 months of U.S.-Israeli genocide of the Palestinian people and marks the 54th anniversary of the occupation of Gaza. A month ago, Biden said that the invasion of Rafah was a red line, but now the invasion of Rafah has continued for 2 weeks, has expanded to the entire Gaza Strip, and Biden's red line is nowhere to be seen. Instead of following through and stopping military aid to Israel, Biden has authorized billions more in weapons shipments to be used to kill and massacre Palestinians. Biden can't draw the line, but we can. On June 8th, we will come together across the country and surround the White House, wearing red and raising our demands high. We will show the world that we are the red line. We demand an immediate ceasefire, an immediate end to the siege on Gaza, the freedom for all Palestinian prisoners, and an end to the occupation of Palestine. Finally, today, the Palestinian Youth Movement is launching a campaign to advance the demand for an arms embargo, which will target the shipping and logistics company Marx. This is the logistics company that has been responsible for transporting the most weapons and weapons components to Israel since the beginning of the genocide. This is a company that shipped 90% of the weapons that the U.S. used in Iraq and Afghanistan. This is the company that is responsible for shipping thousands of weapons that are being used to massacre our people in Gaza. We will not only go after one weapons company, we will go after all of them. For the past 8 months, people have been picketing and protesting individual weapons companies, but now is the time for organized targeted campaigns. By going after Marx, we are disrupting the literal flow and transportation of weapons of mass destruction. We will be hitting an empire where it hurts most. So join our campaign, follow the Palestinian Youth Movement to embark on an international campaign, because we know the power of the people can and will bring empires to its knees. And with this, we end with a quote by the late martyr and revolutionary Ghazan Kanafani. Quote, "Imperialism has laid its body over the world, the head in Eastern Asia, the heart in the Middle East, its arteries reaching Africa and Latin America. Wherever you strike it, you damage it, and you serve the world revolution." End quote. No matter what, we will be at the forefront, continuing to expose their crimes and complicity in orchestrating the genocide by generating a political, economic, and moral crisis for imperialism that they cannot ignore. Long live the international solidarity. Long live the Palestinian struggle. All right. So that was a closing statement, an article from the People's Conference for Palestine last weekend. Definitely every little bit of mobilization helps, or support helps. So if you have the time to go and march, the time to speak and spread the word, whatever you can do, even if it just means donating a few bucks to the movement. Don't forget, you're doing it not just for the people of Palestine, you're doing it for humanity, so that humanity, the word humanity, actually means something, so that we have decency, that we have moral judgment, that we care for all human beings around the world, regardless of hierarchy or class. And this is why we, as socialists and communists and leftists, support the Free Palestine struggle. We know that historically, what this is a colonizer project. Nobody in the region asked for an Israel state to be put there. And the reason it's being put there is a strategic point for Western empires to control the region. So no, it doesn't belong there. It's a colonizer state. Israel, in my personal view, this is not the view of everybody, but in my personal view, should be dissolved. It doesn't belong there, period. It never did. It should be a one-state solution, and let the people vote democratically. All right. There's peaceful ways of going through that, but everybody's going to tell you that no, that's just going to lead to more war. We're already in war, and it's a horrible war. It's a genocide, and it's morally bankrupt. So anyone that supports what Israel and the United States and Western empires are doing to the people in Palestine, you're morally bankrupt, period. You need therapy, you need help, you need to find your humanity. That is my straightforward view. As a Stoic, I'm not going to say that you should be put through the wood chipper or anything like that, but I do recommend that you do some real soul searching as to what kind of life you're leading if you're supporting a genocide, because it's definitely not a happy one. I know it can't be a happy one, because that's not how sane, peaceful people think. Anyways, so I'm gonna move on to the next article. I just felt I should say my personal thoughts on it. But let's move along. Strong closing statement. All right. Next article here. Let's see. U.S. activists deliver 60,000 medical aid to Cuban children with cancer. This is by Amanda Yee, May 29th, 2024. The photo is of Hatui volunteers deliver medical supplies to a pediatric hospital in Havana. Credit, Amanda Yee. That's awesome. Wish I would have been there. All right, reading on the article. Last week, US-based activists with Hatui Project, I hope I'm saying that right, in partnership with IFCO, Pastors for Peace, delivered desperately needed cancer medications, medical supplies, and medical equipment to 2 children's hospitals in Cuba, defying the U.S. blockade. Their first delivery was brought to the Juan Manuel Marquez Pediatric Hospital in Havana on May 21st. The next day, the 20-person delegation traveled to the province of Santa Clara to bring more life-saving medications and supplies to the Jose Luis Miranda Pediatric Hospital. Both hospitals treat children with leukemia and other types of cancers. In total, the 2 medical deliveries were worth around $60,000, and the process of obtaining all the drugs and supplies took nearly a year, according to Hatui Project Director and Coordinator Gloria Lariba. Previous Hatui delegations have traveled to Cuba and brought prenatal vitamins and medications to maternity homes, as well as 40,000 pounds of construction material in 2022 after Hurricane Ian devastated Pinar del Rio province a few months prior. Quote, "We are here to show the Cuban people that they are not alone," end quote, stated Lariba at a May 20th press conference at the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the People in Havana. Quote, "We are much stronger united, and united we will defeat the blockade. We cannot let Cuba down. We will always be on their side," end quote. The blockade as economic warfare. Despite providing free, high-quality healthcare to its people, Cuba's access to such life-saving medication is severely restricted due to the decades-long economic blockade that the United States has imposed on the island. The blockade not only inhibits the medicine itself from reaching Cuba, but also the raw material and the science and technology for Cuba to produce these medicines themselves. Trump's redesignation of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism in 2021 further exacerbates the medical supply shortage, creating additional roadblocks for humanitarian organizations to do work in the country. Most financial institutions, fearful of accusations of supporting terrorism and being hit with the hefty fees, have frozen funds or otherwise refused to process Cuban payments and now require additional licenses from these humanitarian organizations. The genocidal blockade on Cuba has been in place since 1962 and is an act of economic warfare. Its purpose is to starve and strangle the population in hopes the Cuban people will direct their frustration against the Communist Party and overthrow the socialist government. The U.S. government has stated this tactic of regime change explicitly. In an April 1960 State Department memorandum, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Inter-American Affairs Lester D. Mallory admitted that the majority of the Cuban people supported Fidel Castro, that there was, quote, "no effective political opposition," end quote, and as such, quote, "the only foreseeable means of alienating internal support is through disenchantment and disaffection based on economic dissatisfaction and hardship," end quote. The answer then, according to the memorandum, was to, quote, "make the greatest inroads in denying money and supplies to Cuba, to decrease monetary and real wages, to bring about hunger, desperation, and overthrow of government," end quote. Such has been this policy for over 60 years. Every year since 1992, the United Nations General Assembly votes on the necessity of ending the U.S. blockade, and every year the UNGA votes overwhelmingly in favor of its condemnation, with only the United States and Israel opposing the non-binding resolution. Solidarity has no borders. The conditions arising from blockade are currently worse than ever. Not only is Cuba facing extreme shortages in medicine, but also flour and fuel. Electrical blackouts are becoming more and more frequent. Under these severe circumstances, doctors and Cuban officials welcomed the delegation and medical deliveries. Quote, "I think we are going through one of the most difficult times in the national health system," end quote, lamented Dr. Aldo Grandal of the Cuban Ministry of Public Health at the press conference. Quote, "We are extremely grateful for what members of the Hatway Project have made possible," end quote. Quote, "The Cuban state really puts considerable resources into Cuban medicine that today are quite difficult for us to acquire abroad due to the blockade," end quote. Grandal continued, quote, "If we could trade with the United States, these resources would cost us much less," end quote. The Hatway delegation demonstrated that Cuba is not alone and that international solidarity can traverse even criminal U.S. blockades. As a doctor at Juan Manuel Marquez Pediatric Hospital said when receiving the medical delivery, quote, "With this donation, you were able to demonstrate that there is no border that cannot be crossed when you have good intentions," end quote. To support future medical deliveries to Cuba, donate to Hatway Project today. All right. So this is what the Western Empire does. This is what ghoulish capitalism does. Uh, just like the U.S. Is a great example of how they oppress people at other nations, put their foot on their neck whenever possible. And let me be straight up: economic warfare is just as violent as dropping a bomb on people. What America does to other nations with these blockades and these embargoes is horrific. It literally starves people, and these people have to struggle. And don't forget that we call this a free nation, right? That we call this a democracy, that we call it a free market, but it's totally the contrary. I mean, imagine how deep in the sand your head has to be for you to actually believe that there's democracy and freedom here. When you actually read and pay attention to all these things that are being reported and they're factual. Um, I am in full support of the Cuban government. I hope they thrive. They have some of the lowest illiteracy rates in the world. They also have an excellent healthcare system, which is preventative, not reactionary like America. Don't forget that America's medicine healthcare system is reactionary, which means they wait for you to get sick for them to be able to treat you and put you on lifelong drugs, which is profitable to the medical system, because it's about profit here, not about actually helping you. Preventive care. They tell you have freedom to eat crappy food and not teach you to have a good diet, so that then you can just be your whole life on medication, which is horrible. All right, which it's not freedom. It's a ridiculous kind of freedom, where you have a freedom to die of cholesterol because you've ate too much bacon your whole life, so you die at a younger age, but you don't have an actual democracy. You don't actually get to vote. Well, the votes you make are between two total criminal liars, right? This election cycle, right? Like you have two major party options are Trump and Biden. What is this? A joke? Come on, it's not even real. uh, but if you're enlightened, if you're informed, you know that there's no point in voting for either of them. That you just should just vote your conscience and vote for people like, for say, Claudia de la Cruz or Jill Stein, that may not even win, but it might give them more momentum and give the movement more momentum, so that they can become organizers for the movement, so that America can actually have a stronger left. Uh, because trust me, this whole nonsense that Democrats are left or that liberals are left, total nonsense. That's not left. America's left is so small. But when people are educated or informed, simply informed, and decide to believe the facts that are laid out in front of them, they naturally become leftist. That's why most of the well-educated scholars are leftist, or admit to having social programs being way more beneficial than capitalism to humanity as a whole. So yes, support Cuba, support this Hotway project. Let's go visit their link for a second. It says donate here to the Hotway project. Let's go there real quick. Help fund the Hotway project, medical aid projects. All right, so all donations are tax deductible as provided by law. All right, there you go. So it's just so ghoulish when you think about it. Um, the way this democracy or this government works, oppressing and starving other people for the benefit of who mostly? Billionaires that have already 10 yachts? Because it's not for the working class. The working class is in deep decline right now. Most people are falling out of middle income down to lower income status, to lower class status. So keep that in mind when people try to tell you that capitalism works and that you need to keep supporting capitalism so they can keep trickling down economics to you, which has already been proven not to be factual. All right. Uh, let's move on to the next article. Let me check the audio real quick for a sec. Make sure we're doing good here. Audio check. 1, 2. All right. So audio seems good. All righty then. Let's move on. I'll try to get a little close just to make sure audio comes clear. All right. Let's see here. Closing statement. U.S. activist delivers. Community members rally. Here we go. Have another sip here. All right, community members rallied to defend Northwestern University faculty members from Zionists. Written by or published by Julian Ruiz, May 29th, 2024. Let's go. And the article reads, on May 16th in Skokokie, Illinois, students, staff, faculty, and community members rallied to defend Northwestern University professor Dr. Noel Sullivan at the Board of Education meeting for Skokie School District 68. Zionist organizations are trying to remove Sullivan from the school board of the Chicago suburb. During the public comment section of the meeting, they criticized her, centering on a video recorded at the Northwestern Liberated Zone of Sullivan defending her students from Zionist counter-protesters. The video shows Sullivan calmly standing with her arms raised. The man holding the camera was yelling at her before he shook his phone and hit it into her hand. On April 28th, the Northwestern University student encampment in the neighboring suburb of Evanston was targeted by Zionist counter-protesters. Hundreds of pro-Palestine students and allies linked arms and circled the entire camp. Dozens of Zionists started filming people, shouting, quote, show your face, end quote, and shouting Islamophobic hate speech. After the incident, the video circulated widely on social media in a campaign against Sullivan. There has been calls for Sullivan to be fired from her job at Northwestern University. Additionally, photographs, her phone number, and office address were posted online so that people could harass her. More than 50 people attended the Board of Education meeting. People spilled out of the meeting hall and into the adjoining hallways. In her opening statement, Sullivan said, quote, my role in the encampment that day was to protect the rights of free speech, end quote. Defending Sullivan, faculty members read statements from some of the students who had been present when the video was shot. One statement read, quote, Dr. Sullivan was standing directly in front of us, I assume, to shield us from the counter-protesters as those had been putting cameras in our faces and yelling, end quote. Another statement was read from a pro-Palestinian Jewish student, quote, I was swarmed by counter-protesters. Some threatened me by saying, I'm going to find you and make sure you never find a job, end quote. A student who had been at the encampment testified, quote, I unequivocally confirm that at no point did she, Sullivan, voluntarily make contact with any demonstrating individual, end quote, to counter the narrative surrounding the video. At the board meeting, Zionist speakers equated anti-Zionism and anything other than full support of Israel as anti-Semitism. They claimed that Sullivan's presence on the board made them and their children feel, quote, unsafe, end quote, in their community. Womp womp. Groups behind the attack on Sullivan. The Zionist presidents at both the Skokie Board of Education meeting and the Northwestern encampment was organized by two organizations, Chicago Jewish Alliance and Jewish Institute for Liberal Values. These organizations have a track record of targeting students at pro-Palestine encampments across Chicago. JILV, which is run by David Bernstein, has been especially aggressive. This organization receives funding through the Combat Hate Foundation, which is in part funded by Republican mega donor Adam Barron. The Combat Hate Foundation has also created the Combat Anti-Semitism movement, which is part of the forces that seek to redefine the meaning of anti-Semitism to equate it with anti-Zionism. Joshua Wiener is the chief marketing and development officer of JILV. He is also the co-founder of the Chicago Jewish Alliance. He formed worked He formerly worked for AIPAC to acquire and obtain more donor funding. Weiner was also at the Skokie board meeting where he read the statement of the man who recorded the video. Both organizations have been active in trying to take down the DePaul University encampment in Chicago. One of their main tactics is to antagonize students at the encampment and then take video to demonize students and other supporters of Palestine. The same man who recorded the inciting video of Skokie was also at DePaul taking videos of discredited protesters there to discredit protesters there. As one student said in Skokie, quote, "This campaign of harassment and doxing is well underway," end quote. These provocation and videotape tactics have been seen at other encampments around the country as well. When Chicago police tore down the DePaul encampment, CJA released a statement saying, quote, "Our efforts and the evidence documented as part of and as a reaction to our rallies gave the university the necessary leverage and justification to remove the encampment," end quote. Their social media posts are indeed featured on DePaul's official statement given to the forcible closure of the encampment. This attack on Sullivan is part of a wider assault on students, staff, and faculty across the nation facing repression due to their roles in organizing, sustaining, and defending Gaza Solidarity encampments. At Northwestern University, Michael Schill, the university president, claimed at the House hearing on anti-Semitism that staff members would be fired and disciplined for their support of Palestine. Dr. Stephen Thrasher, a faculty member in Northwestern's Medill School of Journalism and the Institute for Sexual and Gender Minority Health and Well-Being, has faced harassment, online attacks, and calls for him to be fired from his position. Faculty and staff at DePaul University, Columbia University, and City University of New York, Arizona State University, Hobart, and William Smith, New York University, and more have been fired, suspended from teaching, or relieved or other roles as a result of their involvement in encampments, their writings on Palestine, and their refusal to be silent during a genocide. While Gaza has witnessed a scholasticide, the destruction of all universities and educational facilities, the U.S. ruling class aims to repress and silence any student, staff, or faculty member who stands against the U.S. war machine. University administrators aim to appease their wealthy donors and corporate politicians, threatening to cut funding and calling for the dismissal of university presidents who negotiate with student organizers. This unified effort of the ruling class and their imperialist lackeys is an attempt prevent more students from turning against the U.S. system of oppression and exploitation. What the ruling class has failed to see is that they have lost an entire generation of youth. The youth people of the United States are unequivocally with the Palestinian people. They have learned that the struggle has more to teach them than the bourgeois academy. They have declared that school is out until Palestine is free. All right, feature photo, Dr. Noel Sullivan protecting students at Deering Meadow at Northwest University, liberation photo. All right, this is awesome. This is great. I'm glad that the teachers are supporting the students and that the students are breaking away from the status quo and from the propaganda machines that sell them the nonsense that capitalism is the way, when you can see that the systemic structure of capitalism is actually a violent system. It's violent in direct views when you see them funding a colonial state like Israel to commit genocide on harmless people of the region. And it's violence when a Western empire like the US pushes embargoes and sanctions on people like the people of Cuba, right? This is not freedom. This is not democracy. This is just another Gilded Age in process. This is wealth disparity. There's a lot of different ways and forms of violence. Withholding food, aid, and even denying assistance to people that are being oppressed, that's violence. Your complicity is violence. So stop being morally bankrupt if you're trying to excuse this kind of system, this kind of structure that delivers nothing but violence to others just because it benefits you or your 401k, that's gross, that's ghoulish. Find more peace in your heart. Find more peace in your mind. Find it's hard, but you need to find more real answers in life than to think that this is the best way humanity can live, and just perpetual violence and war after war for capitalism, for profits margins. It's horrific. So let's stand with Palestine. Let's support the activists as much as possible. If you can't be an activist directly and get in the streets, if you can't be an activist in any form, in any physical manner, the best thing you can do is fund the activist and be that kind of an activist. Or just speak to your friends about it. Bring the issue up as conversations to your friends to make sure that they're aware that this is wrong and that they're passing the word on. Why? Because first of all, if your friends aren't sharing the same ideals as you in such a basic moral issue such as the genocide in Palestine, they're probably not good friends. Just being honest, these are like red flag issues for most people. You want good friends, you have to be a good person. You have to try to be virtuous, and in trying, you are already being virtuous. But the point is to learn from your errors and develop your mind further as you go through life. Okay, so let's see. And when I'm talking about developing your mind and talking about the mental discipline, I'm talking about being informed with the state of affairs in the world, politically, geopolitically, as well as developing mental discipline in your mental health, your personal health, as to how you are conducting your own life. All these things are necessary. People that are apolitical, that are checked out, I don't know. I don't know why they would be. I guess they just find it easy to try to ride the wave. That's all going to be great until the day that you find that the wave is crashing down on shore and that the crap is hitting the fan. And if we're not informed and united as a working class then, and if you're not practicing being united as a working class now, you're not going to be ready for that big hit when it happens. And it's happening. It's happening slowly. Some might be feeling it. Some might not be yet because it hasn't affected them directly, economically, or physically in some way or another. All right, let's move on to the next article here. Let's see here. I guess I could talk a little more about, because it was talking about the community members. As a community, we should always be supportive of each other, whether it's a small community, whether it's a block, as long as we're rallying together for a just cause, for a virtuous cause, for a good cause, for a leftist cause, and sometimes it's worth being at the front of the line and standing up for what you believe in and being an example. Like these teachers or these students that are being threatened that they're not going to get good jobs. Hopefully they'll be getting good jobs in companies that actually care about humanity then, Here's a juicy one. PSL statement on Trump's guilty verdict. So this is by the Party of Socialism and Liberation, May 30th, 2024. It's a short 2-minute read. All right, there he is. He looks sad. He looks upset. All right, the article reads, former President Donald Trump has been convicted by a jury in New York City of 34 felony charges. The case involves an effort by Trump and his cohorts to pay, quote, hush money, end quote, to a person who alleges that she had a sexual encounter with Donald Trump while he was married. The case must be understood in the context of the fierce factional wars being conducted by different groupings within the U.S. capitalist class and between the two ruling class parties. While the Democratic Party politicians and prosecutors have sought a criminal conviction of the former president, Trump and his team have conducted an equally venomous campaign against the Democratic Party. Most noteworthy was the effort by Trump to overturn the election result in 2020 that gave Joe Biden a victory in the Electoral College. It remains to be seen what effect this conviction and the other legal proceedings will have on the trajectory of the 2024 election. The lurid details of the case confirm once again that Donald Trump is sexist, sleazy, and predatory, which we've all known since the Access Hollywood tape and before. But in that he reflects all the sleaziness of his class, the billionaire landlord in particular, who spout empty moral talk and religiosity when speaking in public, but are complete hypocrites in their private affairs, using money and power to silence anyone who gets in their way. The same politicians who use empty moral rhetoric to take away women's rights, or who can quote the Bible when it's time to run for office, act in the most heinous ways in their private lives. But of course, none of this is new and none of this is unique to Donald Trump. The capitalist class is full of crooks of this type. It is noteworthy that U.S. capitalist politicians have been either indicted or impeached for second or third-rate offenses rather than for the terrible crimes they have committed as the leaders of the imperialist state. Richard Nixon was responsible for the deaths of more than 1 million people in South Asia during the war he waged in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. He later resigned rather than be impeached, but not for the terrible war crimes committed in Southeast Asia, but for covering up a burglary operation by Republican operatives against the Democratic Party headquarters in Washington, D.C. Bill Clinton was impeached in 1998 for lying about having sexual relations with a White House intern in the Oval Office, but not for the unprovoked bombing war directed against the government in Yugoslavia. Donald Trump was impeached twice, and the first impeachment proceeding was initiated by the Democrats because they alleged that Trump slowed down advanced weapons shipments to Ukraine. Trump bombed Syria, supported atrocious aggressions against the Palestinian people in Gaza, carried out assassinations, and illegally seized the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C. in an effort to topple the democratically elected government in Venezuela. The Democratic Party establishment supported and did not oppose Trump in his pursuit of these criminal endeavors. Working class political organizations, socialists, and people opposing imperialism should avoid tying their political fortunes or effort to either of the ruling class factions. Both the Democratic Party and Republican Party are led by a clique of criminal imperialists who are conducting endless wars and subversions against independent, progressive governments and political movements. The PSL encourages all socialists to retain an orientation and outlook that is completely independent from the ruling class and stands in opposition to the system of capitalism and imperialism, which is nothing other than a form of organized crime on behalf of billionaires. That's right. That's nothing to disagree with there. I don't care what happened to Trump this week because I wasn't going to vote for him, and he is a criminal. They lock up per capita in America. We have some of the highest incarceration of the developed world. And a lot of those people are innocent people, and a lot of those people get the death sentence and they're innocent. And most voters or Americans don't even bat an eye about it, don't even care about it. And now the simps are losing their minds over Trump getting indicted. Why? I don't care. He doesn't represent me. He never did and he never will. He is an elitist who is always going to support elitist policies for billionaires at the expense of the working class, just like Biden. So if they were both to be indicted and share the same cell, I'm fine with that because I don't plan on voting for either of them. I know they don't represent me. I'm not going to waste my time and energy on them. As a socialist, communist, and leftist, and stoic or practice of stoicism, my concern is to always try to be the most virtuous person by practicing leftist ideals, which is to mobilize and organize and support mobilizers and organizers. For example, someone like Claudia de la Cruz that is running, or someone like Joe Stein. It doesn't matter if they win elections or not. To me, what matters is that I am supporting the right person so that they can mobilize people so that their organization and their movement can grow and empower people to be better leftists. And it's just obscene. It's just obscene and insane how many Americans are still so easily duped by the two-party system in a time of so much information out here. And so it's so clearly, well, I guess because I've been a leftist for a while now, it's a lot easier for me to see things and feel enlightened. But always willing to speak to people that argue over Trump or Biden, to friends, relatives. I speak to them clearly, and this is exactly what I say to them. Those people shouldn't be electing elitist ghouls or capitalist ghouls that aren't going to represent you. There's no reason for someone like Trump to empathize or support a low-wage working class janitor because he doesn't care about them. He thinks they're just there for his use. He cares about them as much as he cares about his hanky. He uses it and he throws it away. That's literally what he thinks of people, and people still support him. And Biden probably has the same thought process as well. When you're that rich and that greedy, your pressure is more on maintaining your legacy and growing your legacy, not really caring about how many people you have to step on or how many soldiers you have to send to death in order for your legacy and your empire to maintain power. Okay, so those are my views. Let's see if there's anything else here. Right, there's one more article here. All right. This is a good one. I'm pretty excited to read this one, actually. Article reads, titled, I Witnessed an Alternative to the U.S. Homelessness Crisis in Socialist Cuba, by Benjamin Zanevich, May 31st, 2024. The photo, residents of Quisiquaba eat together in a dining area, credit Benjamin Zenovic. Within the United States, homelessness has become a permanent feature of the capitalist system, and around 650,000 U.S. residents sleep on the streets on any given night. In the last 30 years, the average age of homelessness individuals in the United States has risen from 30 to 50. Politicians in Washington, meanwhile, dream up new ways to slash Social Security and Medicare, leaving future generations anticipating poverty in lieu of a secure retirement after decades of work. As the U.S. capitalist system furthers itself into crisis, aging populations are not spared from its crosshairs, but Cuba provides an alternative model. As part of a delegation of 20 U.S. activists with the Hatue Project, I was able to visit the Quisiquaba agricultural camp in Artemisa province, Cuba. While there, I observed an alternative to how a society could treat its more vulnerable individuals, especially those that need crucial support later in life. The camp is but another example in which Cuba's socialist system ensures dignity and independence in the later years of one's life. Dignity and independence in the later years of one's life aren't sacrificed and replaced with neglect, abuse, and loneliness. ambulant persons in Cuba. In Cuba, landlordism is abolished and 80% of the population own their own home. This stands in stark contrast to the United States, where the majority of everyday people are slaves to rent payments, mortgages, and the banks that collect them with interest. Housing is a human right in Cuba, even as the country experiences a housing shortage, and the socialist system has virtually eliminated homelessness in Cuba. However, as reforms since the collapse of an alternative world socialist system in the 1990s allowed for the selling of one's home, some families sell their house and leave extended family in Cuba on their own. This has resulted in many elderly and those that need extra care to be left without family support. In some cases, the person sold their home to finance emigration, which ended up unsuccessful, and then were left without housing as a result. In Cuba, sleeping in public places, digging through trash for food, and begging is referred to as ambulant behavior, quote, ambulant behavior, end quote, rather than, quote, homelessness, end quote. The top causes for ambulant behavior can be attributed to alcoholism, mental illness, and loss of family support. Ambulant persons as a phenomenon in Cuba has been produced by the decades-long policies and economic, diplomatic, and covert war of the socialist revolution in Cuba, where Washington's policies have sought hundreds of measures to bring the archipelago back into its colonial control. Ambulant behavior has increased with the ever more severe conditions brought on by the U.S. blockade in recent years. Even amidst these measures, which have cost the Cuban people an estimated $1 trillion since the revolution's victory in 1959, the Cuban government has continually been able to guarantee a right to housing to every single Cuban. This place has changed my life for the better. After a 40-kilometer ride outside of the Cuban capital of Havana, we were greeted at the Quisicuaba agricultural camp by Enrique Aleman, a doctor by profession, but it is also well known as a community and religious leader. Aleman is also a member of the National Assembly of People's Power. Aleman explained, quote, we have the house of the elderly, we have hospitals for special attention, centers of social protection, and a housing program that has been a victory of the revolution, end quote. In explaining the role, he continued, quote, we are working with the whole family and different ages, not only the elderly, and for a positive reentry into society, end quote. Contrasting the role of homeless shelters and nursing homes in the United States, the latter of which are for-profit and seen largely as dumping grounds for elders within a family or community, the goal of Quisicuaba is rehabilitation so that the ambulant person is able to re-enter society. While everyone deserves to be a part of society, only in a socialist society is everyone afforded that right. Quisicuaba was converted from an old school building, and every person is provided accommodation and medical and psychological treatment. There is a farm where, together, the inhabitants grow cassava, sweet potatoes, bananas, and livestock like sheep, goat, and poultry. There is a common dining hall where residents are provided 3 meals a day. Currently, Quisicuaba shelters 130 people, but Aleman told us they plan on expanding to accommodate 580 in the future. Our delegation entered while a morning prayer circle was being held, where residents both of faith and atheists met together and shared their manifestations of the day. One resident, an elderly woman, called for well wishes and prayers for the population of Gaza suffering from the U.S.-Israeli genocide. Soon after, the residents began morning exercise routines. Although Quisicuaba was formed by civil society, Aleman explained, quote, this is in tune with the political will of the country, end quote, emphasizing that only through the socialist system and Cuban Revolution could a program like this be achieved. Yet the United States goes to great lengths to ensure that no facet of Cuba's society is left untouched by the criminal blockade. Aleman confirmed that, quote, the blockade has presented a great test to these gains of the revolution. Due to the lack of material resources withheld by the blockade, it has disrupted the realization of many housing programs, end quote. Amidst this, the testimonials our delegation gathered highlighted the life-changing role Quisiquava plays. I met Carlos, a man in his 70s who had lived his life in Havana as an English professor. Carlos struggled with alcoholism, and although he picked up a job at a hospital after retirement as a custodian, his relationship soured with his family, and he was left in an ambulatory situation. One day, Carlos' liver suffered complications, and he fell unconscious, collapsing onto the street, where he almost was hit by a car. Luckily, an ambulance arrived rapidly and he was treated. Today, Carlos has lived in Quisiquaba for several months, lifted weights, and remaining active and social. Before departing, Carlos asked for me to take his photo, concluding with a clear statement, quote, "This place has changed my life for the better," end quote. Picture of Carlos. Photo, Carlos, resident of Quisiquaba. Credit, Benjamin Zenovic. All right, so my closing analysis on this is, again, the blockades, the embargoes, the sanctions on Cuba by the U.S. are ghoulish. They are economic warfare and violence, and they are criminal, as stated in this article. And as you can see, socialist programs, even under all that kind of strain, the socialist program, which is more of a lifestyle of unity, of community, of helping each other out and sharing, is way more virtuous and would be way more successful if America didn't try to pressure Cuba economically so much. This homeless shelter system is a restorative system. It's not a penal system. They are trying to rehabilitate their homeless in one way or another by making sure that they are mentally well as physically well to return back to be productive in society. You can't just force them to get a job. You have to mentally condition people or via therapy so they can be mentally healthy again, so that they want to be productive in society. This is where America fails greatly. As mentioned in the article, everything here is turned into a commodity or into a business, a for-profit system. So if you turn homeless shelters into a for-profit system, then you benefit from there being more homeless people, right? If you turn mental health into a for-profit system, then you benefit from more people being mentally ill. So yeah, it's ghoulish. There's different types of violence, and this is another one that America practices on its own people. Medical violence, homeless violence, shelter violence. It's violence because you aren't really treating the people as they should be treated for a humane reason. You're treating them for profit. So it goes against your actual objective. I say it this way because to me, capitalism, greed rewards the most ghoulish. So there's a paradox here, and there's definitely opposing views, right? There's definitely a contradiction here. How can you help people if your main goal is to help yourself become profitable? That's just not the way you help people. Okay, so that's it for this week. I haven't checked. Let's see if there's any comments. I don't think there's any comments today. All right, everything seems good. Looks like my screen froze. Test 1 2. Okay, looks like my screen froze a while ago, but it's back to normal now. How embarrassing, my screen froze. Anyways, but hopefully the audio was good, and everybody's good today. Feel free to read and hit the links in the description box. Have an excellent weekend. keep studying leftist articles, and if you like, look into Stoicism. I say this because it's a great practice for mental stability and creating mental discipline, which I think all of us need in order to find peace and become better people and better leftists and socialists. Anyways, everybody have a great day, and goodbye.